I've had my own backstory and journey, and some people will say, I don't know how you did that. And I said, well, first of all, life didn't give me a choice. Life
Yeah,
did not give me a choice.
yeah.
So I didn't have an option. The second one is I never would have chosen that for myself. But at this point in my life, and for several years now, although I wouldn't have chosen it, I also wouldn't change it.
Yeah.
I also wouldn't change it. So, what are a couple of key lessons that you've learned personally that came wrapped in different packages?
Wow. I mean, for me, there have been so many. One I talk about is, the death of my mother,
Mm,
which was very challenging and intense,
yeah.
because she was the person I loved the most and the person that was the dearest to me and everything to me. And when she was diagnosed with stage 4 stomach cancer, I couldn't believe it. Like I was on a high. My first book was a bestseller. I just came off Larry King. That night, I get a phone call. Your mother has stomach cancer. I'm like,
Ugh.
life has a way of like humbling you, up to down. And so
Yeah.
I was shredded and devastated. And I would live in LA. So I began flying from LA to London literally every month
Mm.
for a year. And I'd fly every month for a week, back, forth, back. My life continued, but I said I have to be there for my mom. And honestly, what started out as the worst year of my life
Mm.
became the best year because I got to, through the very difficult moment of seeing my mom, who was a chubby, healthy woman, Japanese woman, shrivel into a stick in months and lose all her weight, hair falling out, turning gray in a matter of months. It was devastating. And I would sit with my mom in chemo sessions,
Mm.
and we would just sit and talk about like nothing and everything. And as painful as it was, it brought us closer. As painful as it was, I realized that for me, my only real regret in life in that moment, what it taught me was, why the hell did I wait till she was dying? And my only real regret was, why did I not spend more time with my mom? I was so busy trying to help the world that I was too busy to just sit and have tea with my mom and make and prioritize it. So it really made me fall in love with my mom on a whole nother level and gave us another dimension of a relationship in terms of what was really, really important. And so in a strange way, I remember looking at my mother and I remember saying, as strange as it sounds, I want to thank cancer because somehow cancer gifted us a whole nother level of connection and this time together. And so it was incredibly hard. But I will say that um, when she passed away, there was a process of allowing myself to grieve. And and what I learned to do was let my heart break and grieve fully. And what I found was in the heartbreak, in the fullness of the grief, it was like the grieving allowed me, allowed my heart to break and it broke open.
That's right.
And what I found was my heart didn't break, it broke open to more love. There was like my current heart's capacity broke open in the grief, and rather than just being broken, it broke open and there was more. There was a deeper capacity to
You
love. And
expanded.
so and it expanded. And sometimes we're afraid to feel the grief because we think it's going to last forever, because we're afraid we won't cope and we're going to be shattered. But what shattered for me was my current heart's capacity, and there was more. And so you talk about resilience. And so what I would say is, through the grieving and the heartbreak, I found a deeper resilience because there's a deeper strength that comes from when you let your heart break and then you found that you're not broken, you've expanded.
That's right.
That's another dimension of strength than just, I'm
Oh,
not going
yeah.
to feel the grief and holding back. Like, oh, I'm strong, so I'm not going to feel the grief. Yeah, but there's another dimension of strength when you break open and then you're still standing and you're stronger. And so
That's right, because life has basically planted you like a seed, and
Yeah.
that breaking has to happen so you can expand and grow. You know, I've said many times, if we let it, grief can be the best guru ever. It's a great
Yes, yes,
mentor.
yes,
It's just a dark mentor. Do you know what I mean? Like
yes,
it's
yes.
one that people are like, that's a little bit scary. That means I have to
Well,
go through and
it's
feel the
just
heavy
sour.
emotions.
It's just a bit sour, you know.
It's just a bit sour. That's a good.
But in life we have all flavors. We have sweet and we have sour, and it's just part of the nature of life, you know. And I think there is no. Here's the thing: there is in the stages of surrender. You cannot get to true surrender, which is, let's say, the open-hearted embrace and participation of life,
Mhm.
without going through the portal of grieving. Grieving is the phase before surrender.
That's right.
There is no true surrender without grief. Grieving is the acknowledgement and letting go. And, you know, all emotions remain present until we fully feel them. So if we're carrying, and most of us, we're carrying unprocessed grief with us through life. And so I would ask everyone to sit with, what have you not let yourself grieve? Maybe it's the dream that you had when you were 20 that you're still carrying a subtle level of grief about. And so many of us were carrying subtle levels of grief in our heart that we haven't released and processed, that's blocking our heart's capacity to be fully open to more joy, more love. Or maybe there's still grief from an old relationship and it's a very subtle level, but now there's a part of our heart that isn't open to the new possibilities of love. And so to truly access surrender to life requires grieving fully. And I found that the quickest way through the grief is through the grief. And whenever you go through the grief, it happens in stages and layers and layers and layers. But the quickest way through that breakup or that is through it.
The
And when
way out is through.